we attempted to work with Russia in good faith to end the violence in Syria. As a result, 16 days ago, we came to an agreement. Russia cast its vote in favor of the agreement, and with that vote, Russia promised its support for a 30-day ceasefire, as did the rest of the members of the Security Council. With that vote, Russia made a commitment to us, to the Syrian people, and to the world, a commitment to stop the killing in Syria. Today we know that the Russians did not keep their commitment. Today we see their actions don't match those commitments as bombs continue dropping on the children of eastern Ghouta. Has the situation in Syria reversed, and Russia is now the tool of Assad, or worse, Iran? We must ask these questions because we know the Russians themselves have continued their own bombing. In the first 4 days following the ceasefire, Russian military aircraft conducted at least 20 daily bombing missions in Damascus and eastern Ghouta. The Russians negotiated the wording of the ceasefire, down to the commas and the periods. They voted for the ceasefire, and they immediately disregarded it. And in the past 16 days, there have been 3 separate allegations of chlorine gas attacks. This is no ceasefire. This is the Assad regime, Iran, and Russia continuing to wage war against their political opponents. And there's another reason we know the Syrians and Russians never intended to implement the ceasefire. Because they planned for it. Over the past 2 weeks, the Russian and Syrian regimes have been busy labeling every opposition group in eastern Ghouta a, quote, terrorist group. Why? So they can exploit a provision in the ceasefire resolution that allows for military operations against ISIS and al-Qaeda. There are terrorists in Syria, but the Russian and Syrian regime label anyone as terrorists who resist their absolute control. They have made a mockery of this process and this institution. For the sake of the Syrian people and the integrity of this council, we must respond and take action. During the negotiations, the United States put all parties on notice that we needed to act if the ceasefire was not honored, and members of the Security Council agreed. And now that day has come. The ceasefire has failed. The situation of the civilians in eastern Ghouta is dire, and the United States is acting. We have drafted a new ceasefire resolution that provides no room for evasion. It is simple, straightforward, and binding. It will take effect immediately upon adoption by this Council. It contains no counterterrorism loopholes for Assad, Iran, and the Russians to hide behind. If Russia, Iran, and Assad cannot agree to stop the bombing in this limited part of Syria for this limited amount of time, they will not agree to anything that's worthwhile. And if they will not keep their word once they've agreed to a ceasefire, then how can we trust them? If we can't save families that haven't seen the sun for weeks because they have been hiding underground to escape barrel bombs, then the Security Council is as impotent as its worst critics say it is. Almost a year ago, in the aftermath of the Syrian regime's sarin gas attack at Khan Sheikhoun, the United States offered a warning to this Council. We said that when the international community consistently fails to act, there are times when states are compelled to take their own action. The Security Council failed to act, and the United States successfully struck the air base from which Assad had launched his chemical attack. We repeat this warning today. We welcome all nations that will work together to finally provide relief for the Syrian people, and we support the United Nations political process that seeks to end the war in Syria. But we also warn any nation that is determined to impose its will through chemical attacks and inhuman suffering, most especially the outlaw Syrian regime. The United States remains prepared to act if we must. It is not the path we prefer, but it is a path we have demonstrated we will take, and we are prepared to take it again. Thank you.